Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex. If you think today's tip or guest interview can help someone you know, please share this with them. And if you enjoy listening to our show, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button on the episodes. Finally, aside from our podcast, our day job here at Riderflex is to provide recruiting, staffing, and consulting services. You can visit riderflex.com to learn more about us and get the information on the services we provide. And now, a quick word from our sponsor and friends at Marketing 360.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Oh, Mary Ellen Vernon, it's such a pleasure to have you, one of my biggest inspirations, on the podcast. Thank you for coming on here.
Steve Urban, it's a pleasure. We've had a nice journey with each other. To be with each other on this journey is beautiful.
It has been, for the listeners, if they don't know, so I worked for Mary Ellen and Tom at Fresh Produce. I think I started in like 07, maybe. Late 06, early 07. And they gave me my first shot at being a C-level executive where I entered into a whole new world of responsibility.
What's cool is when you recognize someone like yourself on the team, the Fresh Produce team, and you see your aspirations and your efforts. That's one of the biggest rewards of being a teammate or an employer, to witness this. And you're exactly one proud moment to see you come in working hard and wanting more. And if we can be a part of that journey, I'm thrilled.
I remember going home telling my wife, I'm like, good news is I got promoted. Bad news is I have no idea what I'm doing.
Good thing you can say that.
For the listeners, will you, if you don't mind, I'd like to just talk about Mary Ellen early on. Mom, dad, siblings, talk to us a little bit. Growing up in Kansas, talk to us a little bit. Give us a story.
Yeah. I like sharing some of these stories because I thrived on them when I was younger and getting started. But 7 kids in our family. I'm the very middle. I like being the middle. Kind of, they buffer you on the front end and take care of the back end, so you can sort of get lost in the shuffle, which was lovely. With 7 kids, we didn't want for a lot, but it's not like we had a lot. But I did witness a few things young. I didn't want my whole life. Like if I wanted something, I wanted to figure out a way to get it. So whether it was babysitting or what. So there's like 3 things I can remember really well is, I want to create enough for myself. And my dad kind of led the family with my mom and told her how to spend the money. Didn't really appreciate that. So, and funny is my mom cooked for 9 kids, 3 meals a day. I thought, I'm out. I'm not cooking when I get older. And I kind of stayed true to that one too.
And what'd your dad do?
He was an FBI agent. So
That's
he was
right.
always, And my mama started working when we were about 7th grade to have some of her own money.
Okay. And he did that until he retired?
Yeah. He was an FBI agent the whole way.
Okay. You never had any desire to go into law enforcement, huh? You're like, nah.
You know what? Some age, I'm sure maybe all of us, like being a detective and figuring something out looked really cool. But that was a short window in my life that I thought that would be fun.
Did he know like everything you did as a teenager? Would he call like the local police and be like, did you see her in town? Like, was there any of that stuff going on or no?
No, but we got in trouble once and he made sure we got scared straight. So we never wanted to mess. No, he did. He could get you out of a bad spot, but he made you learn from that bad spot. So
what'd you get in trouble for? Can you share? Can you tell us what you do?
18 years old. That was a piece of it. My sister and I were getting ready to go to college, and you went to like Target. It was Venture in Kansas, and got all the things you need, toilet paper, whatever. And we both stuck something in our pocket thinking we're buying all this. They're not going to miss a pair of earrings or a fingernail polish. Soon as we went out the door, it was like secret shoppers. They looked your part and swung us back in, got the call. One person called our dad. This is a good reflection point. At 18, he said, how old did you tell him you were? And we're like, Dad, we're 18. So he made sure the judge, and he had us go before the court. And
he did.
We got fined $250. The cool thing of that, we learned a lot, never stole again, never wanted to, never would. He never told our mom, never told our siblings. He just shamed us so much, which shamed ourselves, that we never did it again. But I always thought that was cool. Like Dad never told Mom or our brothers and sisters. It was I know it's an interesting reflection on how he participated with us. I remember that with my own boys growing up. Like if they screwed up, it's like, this doesn't have to go viral. Let's just take care of it in our family and let them know how disappointed we are.
Was that your twin sister, Jen, that you got caught with?
Yep, my twin sister. And I remember he had the judge say, there's criminals, but criminals that come in two are what I have found to be much worse. So he scared us straight. 18 years old, I'm never stealing again.
Interesting. Okay, very good. Now, you were an athlete in high school. I think you ran track in high school, maybe some other things. Did you know, okay, I want to go to college at this particular place. I want to do this. I want to do that. Or were you just, talk to me about the plan a little bit, graduating high school.
So ran track in high school and got a small scholarship for running track in college.
Okay.
And you didn't hardly even know there were colleges outside Kansas. So you either were going to Kansas State, Kansas University, or JUCO. I chose Kansas State because of the track scholarship, and it had a fashion design program. And I had realized about ninth grade that fashion was my lane.
Okay. Now that part I didn't know. Some of these questions I'm asking you, I know the answer to, but that one I didn't know. So early on, you had the fashion bug, even as a young high schooler, and you went to Kansas State in part because of the fashion. I did not know that. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So you always you loved the clothing, you loved the fashion. Were you like one of the best dressers in high school? Were you always wearing something where all the other girls were like, oh, wow, where'd you get that outfit?
Yeah. High school, I started owning it, but my mom made Jen and I, my sis, take sewing lessons, 7th grade summer. We hated her for it, hated her. And then by 9th grade, I'm sewing all my clothes, and I liked the individuality that you could present yourself with. I liked being somebody.
I didn't know that. Ever since I've known you, you always, when you have an outfit on, there's always a little accessory, or there's something there that like highlights that's Mary Ellen, right? It's not just a shirt and a top. Like I would never see you in like a plain. There's always something else, right? Always very good.
Yeah.
So you had that early on. Okay, so you go to K-State. No boyfriends at this time, or did you know Tom in high school? I can't remember.
I met Tom in college, but started dating when we were 25.
Oh, all right. So because Tom was at Kansas State too.
Mm-hmm. He was. Yep.
He was a track guy too. All right. But at first you saw him and you're like, yeah. Hey Tom, what's up? I'll see you at the party, but we're not like dating or anything.
I know. It's funny. Everybody has their journey, but at 18 or at 25, if somebody said you already know at 18 who you already know the person you're going to marry, I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
No way.
Was there any dates? Like, did you even date at all? Like at 21? No, there was no. But you guys hung out kind of in the same crowd a little bit?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah. Track team.
Okay. You had another boyfriend. He had another girlfriend, whatever.
Yeah, I was doing fine.
Did Tom make any moves? Was Tom like, did he try at all?
No. Well, he would make moves like 3:00 in the morning. Messages would get left. Like somebody would pick up the phone, and he was wasted, and people were daring him to call. You get it. But the cool thing is, he's a distance runner. I'm a sprinter. on the journey of the business, that was a good compliment because I'm very impatient. Let's go. And he's like steady, thoughtful, practical, which can drive you nuts. But in the business, it worked out well.
Yeah, definitely. Your styles from a business perspective are just like how you ran track, no doubt about it. Now, okay, so coming out, you graduate K-State, and then what? You're 21, 22. What'd you do right after that?
Stayed home for a friend's wedding. I was in her wedding like for a week, and then took off for California. I thought I got to go to California or New York if I'm going to be a fashion designer. I was dreaming big.
I see. Okay, what'd you do? What did you load it up like a Volkswagen and just drive out there? Did you have a job? Did you have or did you have friends?
When you look at the journey, I had a used VW Bug that my dad gave me for graduation. The engine blew up probably 400 miles out of town. I remember that I guess the air vent had been wired shut and the wire busted. I remember calling my mom and dad from a payphone going, the car just blew up. What do I do? And they said, well, maybe you should take a bus home, regroup, and leave in the fall. And I thought, shit, if I don't get out now, I'll never get out.
So what'd you do?
Spent $1,000 on a new engine. My graduation money was $400. So I owed my sister $600 before we even basically hit the road.
Oh, okay. Oh, so she was with you and I didn't know that. You guys were together going to California?
Yep.
Okay.
Both of us were hitting the road.
All right. Wow. Okay. So you guys had no money. By the time you get to California, you had nothing. Where'd you live?
First with my brother, but we made a deal that we wouldn't stay longer than 2 weeks. So he co-signed for a apartment Jen and I got. And then I just took the first job. I could have been a waitress and made bank, but I thought if I get a waitress job and make money, I'll never get going. And so I took a job in a curtain sewing factory because I thought at least I'm sewing. Oh my God.
I did not know that, Mare. I'm learning all kinds of stuff here. I thought I knew all about you. Okay, so you're working in the sewing factory, but you got dreams already of apparel. Did you know I want to own a fashion line, or I just want to be in fashion?
No, I was dreaming I'm going to do my own thing one day, but I need to do it with somebody before I do my own. But no, I was dreaming big.
Okay. And then what? Tom comes out to California and he's at the bar and you're like, hey, let's do.
Just a quick one. He was living in Texas, probably moved out maybe a year and a half after I was there. We just reconnected at that year and a half. So then he moved out. I worked for a clothing company I got in after the pillows. I got in the back door shipping samples. So shipping samples to sales reps.
I see.
So I thought, man, if I can just get in the door, and got in the door and then ended up there 2.5 years. And I remember a couple moments that are worthwhile was I witnessed who was the best designer or the best teacher as a designer. And I said to my boss, I said, I want to assist her. Or I want to work with her. It was one of my better thoughtful moves. And the whole time I was there, I was just listening and watching and learning, because I know I'm getting out of here.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. And then walk us in now to the transition where you and Tom get together. I think you were in the relationship as Fresh Produce was started, or was Fresh Produce started and then the relationship? I can't, or at the same time. Can't remember.
We started a relationship. The Olympics come to LA, 1984. Vernon, Tom, call him Vernon, was selling T-shirts to road races, like 10K road races, getting them printed T-shirts.
And you're working for the other place, and he was doing that. Okay. All right.
And our neighbor was going to do visor headphones. That was like the latest thing. And he said, you want to split a booth? And we said, we hadn't even thought of it. And it was $5,000 and we didn't have it. So the night before we said, are you sold out? Will you take 1,500? They did. So made like 3 designs, one with brightly colored, but they also had summer games, and made 3 designs, printed them in a buddy's apartment, sold them all day. So did that for 2 weeks.
Wow. Okay. So when you got the booth at the last minute, you're like printing shirts at the very last, like the last 12 hours, you're printing shirts and trying to carry them down to the booth.
Yep. And we had no money. So we would print all night, sell all day, buy new shirts, print all night. It was 2 weeks of full blast. You didn't even realize it was happening. Like it was just full blast.
Wow. Remember when we used to have that much juice? I don't have that much juice anymore.
I love that naivety. I love,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So that was the takeoff for everybody that doesn't know fresh produce. And I want to get into fresh produce now, but that's really kind of how the relationship started, and the t-shirts and everything is the 84 Olympics. And you guys, you did that, you made some money, and that 2 weeks is over and you kind of wake up and go, okay, now let's charge forward.
Yeah. Quit. We just said, let's go for it.
Mm.
And since you're on the LA coast or the California coast, we're like, they loved our t-shirts. They loved the colors, which happened to be different than everyone else at the Olympics, which were patriotic, red, white, and blue. Ours were like aquas, orange, pinks,
Okay. Yep.
just the color that was a pleasing palette. So real quickly started drawing designs like sun, surf, sand, on the beach, different visuals for guys and gals. And then Tom would go out and peddle them. So I'm doing the art, he's peddling,
Okay.
and that's
And
how
he's selling,
started.
you're coming up with the designs, you're getting them manufactured where? At some print shop in LA? Who's making them for you at that time? You remember?
We were the t-shirts were like Hanes Beefy Tea, or
Okay,
we were
gotcha.
just buying those t-shirts.
I
Then
see.
we found a printer, and
Okay.
then I wanted t-shirts eventually to be more feminine, so I started cutting the neck out, sewing them, or doing something here. Anyway, tried to feminize them. And that's why we ended up making our own t-shirts, because at some point it's like, we girls don't want to all be in the Hanes Beefy Tea.
Okay, I see. All right. And Tom's going out and selling them to tourist shops and beach shops and whatever. He's pulling up in his car, taking his stuff in there.
I just remember we got into Nordstrom's one day, and it was like, oh my God, that was huge, obviously. But I remember we went to Nordstrom afterwards to celebrate. We could each pick one item out of the whole store. Like, you can have, because there was no money for, probably the first at least 3 years.
Yeah.
So I remember the day that we launched into Nords was huge. But prior to that was just trade shows, little resorts. The trade shows really launched us.
Yeah. And it was a little bit ramen noodles back then, right? There wasn't a lot of cash going on.
I can remember so many times going, are we ever going to go out to dinner? And you don't have to think about going to dinner. Oh my God.
Yes.
But it's interesting when you look back, that was tough more than that. It was just tough.
Yeah.
But those are some rewarding years. I like people to know.
It means more once you get to a point where you can go to dinner without looking at your checkbook. Once you reach that point, it's so much more rewarding if you actually live to the other side, right?
Yeah.
Because I can totally remember those days too. We were like, okay, well, let's see how much money's in the bank. All right, so it's moving along now. At that time, was it called? No, it wasn't called Fresh Produce. It was called something else, I think, at first, wasn't it?
I think at first we had it called Sunflower Graphics, roots to our Kansas and whatever. But then it turned out somebody in Kansas called at some point and said, that's our name, you can't use it. So we were sitting in a bar in La Jolla, and we're like, what is this? Everyone said it's so fresh, the colors are fresh product. That's not it. And Fresh Produce kept circling, and we're like, well, what's the worst? It's catchy and people won't forget us. The funny problem over time, probably took 3 years that we weren't getting true fruit and vegetable calls. And you get it. And one story along the path was a customer had been out of town, and her neighbor was getting the packaging, and on the outside it said Fresh Produce for a shirt or something, and she stuck it in the fridge or the freezer thinking, well, I got to keep it nice for the neighbor when she gets back from her vacation. So, but the name ended up really working and catchy, and probably even more valuable today as far as a name.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, you look at all these companies, Google. I mean, can you imagine when the guys are starting Google and they're like, oh, let's call it Google. And I'm like, what? I mean, but it ends up being catchy, right? And Fresh Produce, very similar. Because I remember when I got the phone call from a recruiter, and they're like, Fresh Produce. I'm like, what? I'm like, but yeah, you don't forget it. That's for sure. So Fresh Produce ended up being the name, and it was women's and men's apparel at first, or just women's. I can't when you
just
first,
women's.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, casual apparel, beach apparel, resort apparel, bright colors, right?
Yep. It started as a t-shirt, and then customers would start saying, oh man, I wish I had a pair of shorts to go with my print, then a dress. And it was a lane that a lot of t-shirts were kind of cheesy back then, like a cat or a
Mm.
dog on the t-shirt, or not very artful. And I would say the color and the graphics put us on the map. And then the customer let us like by saying what they wanted. I would like a dress. And it became a whole summer resort line.
Yeah. And then it became very well known across the country and especially in resort areas. I mean, if you were in Naples, Florida, or La Jolla, and you went into a resort shop or a beach shop, I mean, there was fresh produce, right? With a very strong presence. And so for the folks that don't know, you had the business for 30, how many? 35 or almost 35? I
30,
can't remember.
35 years.
35 years of being in business, because you started it when you were in your 20s, right? I mean,
Yep.
damn.
Started at about 25.
Wow. I mean, you ran the bit, and it was wholesale, it was retail, it was e-commerce, it was all of it.
Mm-hmm.
35 years of us running a successful company, and got up to, I don't know if you want to share volume. I guess it doesn't matter these days, but got up.
I think at our height before internet, I think our best year was 53 million.
Yeah. I'm a $50 million company. And, it's one thing to run a successful, profitable business that sustains your family for 35 years, but all the other families that were benefited by the growth of the company over the years, right? So all those people you touched, all those lives you touched, all those families that grew up in the business, made money with the business. But then on top of that, to like stay married all that time.
I tell you,
I mean,
I think
naivety
it's
not
is
that,
bliss.
yeah.
You don't, I mean, naivety is bliss. One to start at 25. I'm only saying that because you don't have anything to lose. Like,
Yeah.
I always encourage people, like especially in your 20s, not necessarily the whole way, but just explore and follow your passion or seek your passion, even if it falls apart and you're looking for the next something. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Starting it young, I'm thrilled. Tom and I, you know what? So many people always said, wow, stayed married, did all this. It was such a connector. And initially it was tough because you're doing everything and you're overlapping with each other all the time, and it's tough. But when we learn to divide our responsibilities, like he's in charge of that and I'm in charge of this, and let's respect each other's opinion, all of a sudden you're a team working for the same goal, but you're not on top of each other. So, and then Steve, I just remember, there were some tough times, whether it was the recession and having to let people go. But I just remember on the journey, and you're one of them, how beautiful, you showed up at one of those difficult times and just reminded us of what you just stated, which was through the beauty, there was beauty, and through the hardship, there was hardship. And it's good to remember, this job and this team together provided homes, education, livelihoods. And that stuck with me at vulnerable times. And I have you to thank there, buddy.
Yeah, it does. It is about the people. I mean, it is a human game, right? At the end of the day, I know, like, when you think about business and you read articles and, everything kind of appears on the surface about the money, but really it is about human beings and about the people and the relationships and the experiences you have with people and the effect you have on people, whether it's positive or negative. And for me, I think that means more than anything, right? I think about those. I don't sit back and go like, oh, that one year when I was a district manager, we were up 25%. And that's my most proudest moment. Like, I don't think that. I think about the people, the promotions, the effect I had on them, or the inspiration I had on them, or the inspiration people had on me. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
It is about that. So you had some huge wins in there as you grew over time. What would you say? You probably get asked this a lot. Like, what are some really just big moments that stick out in your mind? The first contract with Nordstrom's was huge.
That was huge because it put the brand on the map or gave it exposure. And I don't even know if we were saying brand at that point. You had a t-shirt line with shorts and what have you.
Yeah.
So big ones are, Nords because it gave you exposure, but it's people on the journey that understood your dream and your passion and jumped on and believed in it, whether it was sales reps, whether it was operational. Like Tom and I are not operational. If anyone on this podcast doesn't know, Steve Urban operationally is a guru, and I say that authentically. But people, I often say the best part of a business is the people, and I have to say the hardest part of the business is the people.
It's so true. Isn't that true? Right. I mean, if it wasn't for great people, like you never could have got it to 50 something million without having great people. But whoo, man, sometimes people are a pain in the ass too, aren't they?
I applaud you for what you're doing because I saw what kind of a teammate or employee you were, and you lived your best self is what I witnessed. And then you witnessed how others had opportunity. So what you're doing now does not surprise me one bit. You saw a lane that you were good at and you could help others be better at. Sincerely.
When you talk about the people management piece of it, I mean, you guys are really, I think I know you always kind of say you weren't operationally, maybe that wasn't your largest strength, but I mean, you kept a company running for 35 years. I mean, so you had some operations in there. I will tell you from a people piece, though, from a people management piece, and I know I've told you this personally too. I'm not just saying this on the podcast. Like you're the most inspirational mentor leader that I was ever around. I mean, nobody inspired people like I saw you do. I mean, you would come into the building and everybody would just, oh, okay, everybody's in a better mood now. Mare's here.
Steve, you're kind with your words, I think.
I could feel you. I could almost feel you coming into the building. I would be like back in the corner. I'm like, oh, Mare must be here. I don't know. It feels different. It was definitely like that. And I think that's very important for leaders to understand.
Cool to say that. And I think if I had anything to say with even humanity, if you listen and you're interested because you're authentically interested, there's just more depth to your relationship. So the teammates that you're working with feel it and you feel it. It's just a better experience. So for me, I appreciate your words. And I think the bottom line is to really listen and care and share. And there's just a deeper level that connects we as humans more authentically so that we do want to work for and with each other.
And do that to the best of your ability as a leader. If you're listening to this episode, do that to the best of your ability while you're running a business. I mean, you want to do everything you can to help people. You want to do everything you can to benefit them in their career. But it is a business. And sometimes when you get people in the business that don't match the culture, or maybe they're just not performing, they're not performing where you need them to. I mean, you have to make changes, and sometimes those are going to be painful. I always tell everybody, like, if you think you're going to be CEO of a multi-million-dollar business and everybody's going to love you every day, like that's not possible. Because there's got to be somebody out there, like, in fact, I just had this conversation recently with somebody. I said, look, I called 15 of your direct reports and every single one of them said you were awesome. Like,
oh,
okay.
wow.
I'm like, I know that's not true. Like somebody's
you're right.
Somebody's either lying or you're not coaching them as well as you should because a real coach and mentor is going to be pushing you to your max, right? They're going to be trying to elevate your performance. And sometimes that's uncomfortable for people, right? And you always inspired people, I think, authentically basically, I always thought of you as, hey, look, if you work hard and you're taking care of fresh produce and taking care of the family, and then great. If you're not, it's not going to be a fun day.
Yeah, I felt strongly about there's a time and a place for all of us, just not all of us all the time. So when somebody was looking for the next something, I almost always, I believe, wanted them to go pursue that, because I mean, if we're going to do something most days of our life for a length of time, I really want you to find what it is that makes you walk your best.
Yeah. I remember you telling me, by the way, when I got the job as president at Healthy Back and I left Fresh Produce, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, you were like, oh, so you're going to fly back and forth every week to DC? You're like, okay. You're like, okay, yeah, let me know how that works out for you.
I was, you know what I was proud of? I was proud of your aspirations. You were for it.
Yeah, I know, but you were right. Like 6 months in, I'm like, okay, these flights suck. This sucks. How about this, Mare? I want to ask you, tell me what's next. Is Mare gonna, I mean, such a wonderful career, great life. I mean, everything, 2 beautiful sons, wonderful husband. By the way, Tom was always so wonderful to me. And I want to make sure I say this on the podcast, such a great guy that I always had a high amount of respect for, and always took care of me. And I was always just super amazed by how you guys dealt with each other. I mean, and now now I'm getting off track here. I'm getting off on a rant, but I would literally, like, I would come out of meetings and be like, man, how do they do that? Like, how do they keep it together like that? Cause I can almost, cause I worked with you long enough to where I knew when you guys were disagreeing on the topic. Like I could smell it, right? I could see it, but somehow, like, there was never any, like, I never saw you guys actually get into a real argument in front of other people, like, ever. I don't know how that happened. I don't know. I don't know what you wait till you got home, or you like close the door. I don't know what you did.
you had to get it out. It's just where you got it out. But here you are this many years later. There's something beautiful about creating something together. So there is plenty of hard times, but I don't know. I'm at an age now. It's like I think you're just about to say what's next. I still have a lot of passion, creativity, and Tom's doing his thing right now and I'm doing mine. Okay. But I do notice in the relationship, it was nice when there was a common goal that had momentum and was creating something. So if I was sitting with somebody and they were saying, how'd you do it? I'd just say, there's something beautiful about creating something together and reaping the rewards from it for the effort.
So what is next? What is Mare gonna just chill in Santa Barbara, hang out with the friends, go to tea, relax, or what are we doing here?
You know how when you're working your buns off, like we all have, you're just like, man, if I could just eat bonbons on the couch and like, or just not. And so
first of all, eating bonbons and sitting on the couch doing nothing those aren't things I would tie to Mary Ellen. So I don't know if you've ever done that.
There were moments in this journey that you're like, please, can I just lay on the couch and eat bonbons? But I'm not very good at it. Yeah. So, you try to reflect on what you've learned on your past, and then try and get closer to, if you got another third of life to live. Like, I want to be as proud of this chapter as I've been of my past. And I want that for all of us. 2 things. I still love apparel, and I love that it works on people or makes their life better because they can present themselves they want. But, what's the line that I love? When you know better, you do better. And apparel has a big impact on the environment. And I would like to think I could create something that's more less environmentally impactful. So you can upcycle fabrics and bodies. You can upcycle means you take something that was for another purpose, or even overstock for another company and recreate it in something so it doesn't just go into a landfill. So apparel's still close to my heart, and especially now, I've always been about community and connection, having fun, doing good. I've working on something that's called Project Gather, and it's about
Project Gather. Okay.
And it's about bringing people together thoughtfully, especially with COVID, man. I just feel like this isolation or lack of time together in the long haul for our human spirit's not good. So I'm not sure the full form of it, but I know I've got a deepened community connection. Let's have fun together and let's do good together. So
can you go in? Can you you can't give us any details? Is it a nonprofit? Is it a,
you know what? It's interesting you're asking that. I've dug in deep to nonprofits, and I having run a business for 35 years, I don't really want to jump back on the business world. And nonprofits, you have to have a board, and I had a board the last few years of Fresh Produce, like the last 5, and I can't say I dig a board. So to be honest, I don't know what shape, or I don't know if someone's going to come along and say, I'll partner with you and all run the business side, but you do your creativity and dream. So I'm not ready to commit to a nonprofit or a business at this time. I just got out fully of Fresh Produce just over a year ago. That was the full done. So it's still early in the game, but I'm pursuing my dreams, but not ready to sign the dotted line for a nonprofit or a new business. Okay.
Will Project Gather be tied to apparel in some way?
Yep. I think it'll have a give back component.
Okay.
Like
I got you. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Very good. Well, so right now there's nothing, you haven't launched anything new. We don't need to highlight anything for the podcast. I don't need to direct anybody to a website for this episode necessarily right now.
Look around March, April, there will be some talk about one of the Fresh Produce co-founders is launching something new. And I think it'll be by April that I'll be ready. But right now it's too early and there's not anything specific to share.
Okay. Very good. Is the Fresh Produce, can people still buy the product somewhere? Or what's the
latest? Know what? Someone bought the name. One of our retailers bought the name about a year ago, and I check it occasionally, but I haven't seen it relaunch yet. But his aspirations was, the last thing he said to me is, Mare, I want to take this brand and make you proud. So I wish he and his team only the best, and I hope it works out for him.
Right, because that would be weird if somebody took the name and started messing it up, and then you're like, "Hey, man, that's you're."
Yeah, it's interesting though. At some point after all this, I've let it go. It took a while, you know that, but it took a while. But I'm very clear that is part of my past.
Okay, very good. Very good. All right, and neither one of your handsome young sons they didn't want to take Fresh Produce, and they're not in apparel.
They're not in apparel. I think if it had happened like when they were a little bit older, it could have been more interesting, but I think they want to put their own mark or footprint out into the world, and they're working hard. So knock on wood.
How old are they?
25, 27.
Okay. No wives yet? No fiancés?
No, but tight relationships, lovely girls. They're good.
They're both in a serious relationship now. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Is the L word being used? The L word?
Oh. Yeah. I was thinking if it was the M word or the L, but I got it.
The L word? Okay. Are they did they come over for Christmas?
Thanksgiving.
Ooh. Well, both girls were there for Thanksgiving.
It's sort of a big deal in our hood, Steve Urban.
Oh man. Okay. I feel something here. Could be getting closer. All right. Well, the reason I'm asking you this is because I have 2 granddaughters now.
I saw a picture of one.
And I know that it's going to happen for you pretty soon. When it does, it's weird. I will tell you, Mare, when it happens, it's going to be like, oh, this is so wonderful. But I don't know if I like being called a grandpa or what. It's kind of like,
did you pick a name for yourself?
I was going to say it got picked for me. I can't remember because, because there's so many people involved on the other side too. And then you kind of have to have this this family conference call where you're like, okay, what do you want to be called? And everybody's got to, it's kind of a little more weird than I thought it was going to be. At the end, I was like, whatever, just tell me what I'm supposed to answer
Oh,
to.
funny, funny.
Because there's
What did
other,
I think I wanted to, just because we're talking about the boys with them in their 20s, we
yeah.
just over Thanksgiving, we were all talking together, and I think Bub's got that deeper reflective thing. He's like, okay, if you look back on, 5 years in your life, what 5 years were the best or whatever. And it was interesting, Steve, just because we're talking work, and I really enjoyed 5 years in the 20s when it was the discomfort of the journey is where you get a lot of the reward. So I kind of like to share that.
Yeah, right. It's true. Why does everybody go to that? Isn't it interesting that a lot of founders, they go to the struggle because that's what they end up cherishing. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
They, rarely do I get a founder on the podcast and they're like, okay, I made it and I'm on my yacht in Florida and this is so cool. Like they never talk about that, right? They always talk about the struggle part, like when the ramen noodle part where they're like, oh, I didn't know if somebody was going to repossess the car. So I'm glad it was still there the next morning.
No, I know. It was interesting because now you're not in your 20s and the boys are in their 20s, and they're saying when were your favorite, and it was about the struggle and the discomfort, because then the reward is more meaningful. Get it?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. I want to ask you a couple more. I know we're getting close to the back end. I want to ask you a couple of outside the lines questions, so to speak, a little bit like bigger picture things that CEOs are facing right now for companies, worldly topics, so to speak. I want to get your opinion because I know you have strong emotions and convictions around certain things. So I want to get you're never afraid to say how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about CEOs these days that speak out on social media and take a side on hot social topics or political topics or whatever the debate topic is of the month, right? You didn't really have to deal with that, right? Like early on, 80s, 90s, whatever, early 2000s,
Right.
you didn't have to worry about that. But now, some of these CEOs, they go on, they put out a Twitter post or whatever, and they're like, I feel this way about this topic, whatever it might be, pick a topic.
Mm-hmm.
It don't matter. Should CEOs do that? What are your thoughts when you see that? I'm just curious.
Well, one, I feel a bit disheartened with disheartened with the state of humanity. I can remember, the color of your skin being a big deal, 40 years ago, and much longer than that. That makes me sad that we're still even discussing this.
Right. Totally.
I don't understand that a bit. And I just think it's a much deeper layer. If we all just realize we're just humans on this earth and we've got a limited amount of time. And if we all could just get back to being our best self, or trusting that we're trying to be our best self, or willing to get educated to at least have a fair assessment of a situation. I don't know. I feel too much division. And as a CEO of a company, I don't think that's your position, personally.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, because usually when they're speaking out, it's going to cause division, even within their own company, That's the part, I've heard people say, well, people in leadership roles are, quote, responsible for taking a side on key things. And my response to that is, the problem there is that if you're running a company of 100 people, 50 of them probably like blue and 50 of them probably like green. And if you go on as the CEO and say blue's an awesome color and green sucks, you're going to piss off half your people.
Yeah. Wait, I had a point that I wanted to share. I think we need to, the best thing we can do is have these conversations. Like, Let's just
Yeah.
talk. Why do you believe this way? Because you're probably going to get a nugget or two that'll go, I can
There
respect
you
that.
go.
Or at
There you
least,
go.
so I think it's about conversation. It's not about putting your hand up. Blue is the only way to go, right? Or green. So I think it's about educating each other and being willing to listen. But I don't
Yes.
think, I don't
Couldn't agree
think
more.
blue is the way to go. Personally.
Yeah, you can't just pick one thing. It's so right, Mare. I put out a couple of podcast topics on this thing. I think my message to people was, look. Here's the deal. Do I personally have convictions around certain topics? Yeah, sure. But I'm happy to go down to the tavern and have a beer with you and talk about whatever it is you like. I'm happy to have a friendly conversation.
Yes.
I'm not going to like demonize you because you like purple or
I'm
whatever.
The same. Be curious enough. We all have a background that paints our picture more than we realize. And just listen long enough, be curious enough to try and understand it. Don't have to agree, but that's how I feel.
And that's the part I hate about social media is people can't seem to have friendly conversations. They just want to be mean. They just want to be mean to each other and be like, I was like, isn't that interesting? They'll get on social media and they'll be mean and take a side on something and they'll be closed-minded. But if you took that same person and they went down to the tavern and had a beer with somebody, they probably would just be like, oh yeah, let's talk about it. But they think they can.
Yes.
To your point, how about we gather in person and like get away from these screens we're hiding behind to have conversations, because when we're in person and talking, it usually goes better.
Oh my gosh, Steve, you're talking to my choir in my head. Like, we need each other. We need to feel each other. And right now it's hard. And then when you have COVID on top of it and it gets more isolated, that's not good for the psyche for any of us.
Totally agree. How about this one? This is another, let's talk about COVID, for example. So we deal as a recruiting firm,
right?
We place people for a living and we have clients that we deal with. And now we're in this weird thing where, some clients are calling us saying, tell the candidates that they got to be vaccinated, tell the candidates that they got to do this, that. And other clients are saying, we don't care about this. Or basically every client we deal with is kind of trying to figure out where they live in this weird space and what their rules are going to be. And then we as the recruiting firm are having to, of course, we're trying to represent our clients with whatever they want. And then we're trying to relay that to the candidates. And it's like, wow, running a company and hiring people is hard enough by itself without throwing all of that in there.
Oh my gosh.
So some of our CEOs are having a real hard time with it, no matter what their side is, like what side they're on doesn't really matter. It's just dealing with it is difficult.
I talked to someone that I worked with for years recently, and she's an employee in a company, and they're starting to come back into the office, but since COVID's happened hit 2 years ago, they've hired people like, say, in Arkansas, but their company's in LA. So this employee in Arkansas doesn't have to come into the office, but they're getting a wage that reflects better than the wages you make in Arkansas. So what I was trying to do is like understand what the company was trying to deal with and the employees. So it's a new set of issues. Yes.
We get that too. We get companies doing that too, where they're like, well, I hired a software developer. He lives in the country. You're out on a farm in Idaho. Well, he doesn't live in New York. So I only need to pay him this. And I'm like,
yes.
That's a debatable topic.
Yep. Yeah. A whole new set of issues now, pal.
Yeah. COVID, remote, all of that. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. And I have talked to CEOs lately where they're just like, okay, yeah, I talked to a guy yesterday. It was on the podcast recording recently. And he said, I'm just trying to make a good product at a fair price and deliver it on time. I thought about the apparel days. Like, seriously, like we're just trying to get the line made, get the marketing done, get the clothes here, and get them into the client's hands. Like, we're just trying to do that.
I know, and you always had to reframe yourself going, this isn't like brain surgery. We're trying to get a t-shirt into a retail store. Certainly we can do this without all of this. But yeah, I feel for everybody operating how they have and how they do now and how they're trying to find their way to the future. It's a challenging time. But I always looked at challenges as opportunities or an opportunity to look at things from a creative perspective. So how can we look at this differently? We can look at it as it's slamming us hard, or we can look at it as, okay, this is what I've been given, swallow it, now what? And let's look for a fresh creative perspective.
By the way, for all the listeners out there, if you want to know what Steve Urban's thoughts are on remote work or COVID or whatever touchy subject you want to know my thoughts on, I'm never going to say any of that on social media. So stop waiting for it. If you want to call me privately and talk about it over beers, that's different.
Nice. Get the beer with Steve Urban. He's a good
That's
time.
right. Then we can chat about it. I know we're out of time. I want to ask you one more question. You touched on it a little bit, but I mean, if you had to put your core purpose in life now at this stage into a sentence, let's set Bubs and Scout and Tom kind of aside for a minute as a kind of a primary core purpose. So that aside, now at this stage in your life, what is Mary Ellen's core purpose moving forward?
I mean, I dream big. So I think it starts with myself, like do what makes you happy and ultimately make others happy. I'd like to think I could participate thoughtfully with strengthening humanity for all the right reasons. I don't know what that looks like yet.
Oh, I like what you said there, isn't it? So I think that's important. If you can find a passion that makes you happy personally inside, but rewards others and makes them happy too, then you hit the rainbow. You hit the rainbow.
Yep. I like the way you framed it, Steve Urban. That's where I'm at.
Mare, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You're really special to me. Always will be. Thank you for being on the show, and thank you for everything you did for my career personally.
Well, I'm proud of you, buddy, and I think you're playing in a great lane. And I like knowing when you go up the hill and you go camping, hiking, whatever, you're complimenting your life beautifully. But I think you're in the right lane for a whole bunch of people. So congrats.